the window. You gonna open the door, or you gonna just keep it blind? I thought you usually open up the window, no?
You don't have to. We look better with it closed.
All right, call the meeting to order.
Is he ready?
Ready?
Ready? We'll wait for Mike here to grab a seat. Okay, meeting's called to order. What's the update on the
Hi, George.
police station? How are you doing, Brian?
Good.
Good.
The update on the police station is, the site, if you've been out to the site in the last week, there's no activity on the site right now. The contractor has made the determination to pull off the site, and it's primarily because of the site work which is being performed in the adjacent property. There's some development happening which includes blasting, and the blasting that is being done, the general contractor has taken the opinion that's hampering the completion of his project, because what he'd like to be doing is pouring concrete and doing some masonry work. It's the concrete and masonry work, while it needs to get to strength, it cures over time. So their concern was the blasting would be potentially impacting the strength of concrete or strength of mortar. So he's taken the approach to wait until the blasting is done.
What's the timetable?
How that impacts schedule, I don't have a clear answer on that, because I think the blasting is going to take another week.
Probably should be done by this week.
End of this week?
I believe
so.
Yeah.
Need a permit to blast.
Yeah, cold. Do you have any? Friday?
That's the same
Right.
interpretation that we
Blasting
have.
Friday or
I'll
done Friday?
confirm that tomorrow. I'll go
Done
over
Friday.
and talk to him.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they're on schedule or not on schedule, but that's what's impacting the site at this current time. We have run into some items that have created change orders on the project. The numbers that you have seen have only been impacted by change order number 1 and change order number 2. And after change order number 1 and 2, there was a net credit to the project, primarily because the elevator bid came in under the allowance. So that was an adjustment on change order 2. Change order 3 includes numerous items that have been talked about, and the contractor has been given direction to proceed. And now, if we're taking face value numbers, it's over $103,000 worth of change orders. I have not seen the backup to these, although I know the topics which are included in these change order requests. I cannot sit here and say that these are the exact numbers that represent the materials or the time that's taken. We are going to rely on McGuire to review as far as time spent and machines and equipment. But they're mostly site work related or underground related items, which brings up site work in the total topic of site work. The reason that we're seeing change orders from the contractor having to do with site work issues is we had originally bid the project with the owner doing site work scope. So the general contractor had very defined construction limits as to what they were to perform and what they were not to include in their bid. And since the contract was signed, the owner has not performed any of the tasks that the owner had identified as within their scope. So now the owner has asked the BC Construction to take over those scopes of work that are holding up them proceeding. One issue that the town did perform out there was the tree clearing. So the trees that were cleared, that was coordinated through the town, and the town performed the tree clearing. But other than the clearing of the trees, anything that requires excavation or backfill has now been assigned to the general contractor, and that was a task which was originally in the contract scope of the owner to perform.
So what, the 103K of changes, is that net or is that gross? You said there was a credit. So is
That's
that
gross.
That's gross.
That's, so there was $1,000 on the first one, there was $11,000 credit on the second one,
Yeah.
and then the third one is $103,000, right?
No, the total change order activity to date is 103,000.
Oh, okay.
So what is the anticipated cost that is now back underneath the general contractor for site work?
We have asked the contractor now to give us a proposal to do all of the scope which was originally identified to be performed by the owner. We don't have that proposal yet, and the contractor's asked for a couple more weeks to produce that number. He is getting his subcontractors to go out and look at the site, and this would be for everything back to paving and striping and landscaping and whatever's on the drawings, he's putting a price on it.
Is he breaking down, is that price going to be able to break down certain components of that, or is it going to be just a number that you get?
We've asked for a number.
Wouldn't it make more sense to get an itemized cost for these components? Because there are some of those components we can do.
It was, I'm sure he's getting different numbers, and whatever numbers he has, I'm sure he'll be happy to share. But we've asked for what would be the price for you to perform this scope of work?
I just want to clarify, that's not wholeheartedly accurate on the site work of the town. 34,000 that he has put in for is for concrete work, and about 50,000 was from change orders because of the material that was under the slab, and about 25,000 was removing materials from this that was underneath the slab, and about 27 was for a change order for the plumbing on the Sally Port.
That was the drain.
The drain was about 27,000. So as far as the 100,000, it's not all site work. It's basically 34,000 for additional concrete work to redo the whole slab. Yeah. So about 80,000 of that was change orders that we had no control over.
Can I ask a question? So was it a conscious decision on the town's part that we either didn't want to or didn't have the resources to perform the work that we originally anticipated we would, or?
Well, I mean, part of the frustration that I have is this, goes back to Andrew, having discussions with Andrew about, has he confirmed with DPW what the scope of work is? And I don't know if you have any materials about what that is. He said he'd had many discussions with the DPW director about what the whole scope of work was, so if you have any information about,
For the site?
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have any record of that, but we're here to work on your behalf. We got to do whatever we have to do, okay? And if we have to,
We talked to the DPW director since.
Yeah, I mean,
He didn't realize the full scope of what was being asked. I don't think that it was discussed in its entirety of what needed to be done. His understanding was, can you guys, when you have a day and you have availability, can you go over there and pluck away at doing some of the site work? That was his expectation of the job, not the entire job.
I mean, I think his understanding from me talking to him too was, putting in the driveway, putting in the roadway, doing any of the culvert, doing any of the water retention, that's all stuff that's within his scope. Pulling out ledge and, along the side of the foundation is not, typically something that would be in his wheelhouse.
So that hasn't changed. He could still perform this.
Yeah, with subcontractors, yeah.
Right. So why wouldn't we, which goes back to my original question, why wouldn't we break that out and ask the contractor to do what we definitely know our DPW cannot do, and not include things that we know he can do? Why wouldn't we find that out at the front end?
That wasn't what I was asked to do.
Mike is going to give us an itemized sheet with the different fees associated with the site work. He's going to lay it out. And he wanted to give us a very detailed, that way we could pick and choose. It's my understanding from our conversations, give us a detailed list of what the costs associated with each task would be, so we could review it and have it. He's not just throwing out a number, he's been waiting to get multiple different subs to do different aspects of the job, but he was going to give us a detailed list of the different fees associated with
So
doing.
that goes back to the question I asked before. We are getting that level of detail. I thought you said you were going to get a number.
We have asked BC Construction for a number based on the directive I got from Matt. I know Matt's been talking with,
But you're going to get a breakdown of each
Yes.
individual item.
That's,
Okay,
I won't accept it otherwise.
okay.
Mr. Leon? And what we could do when we get that price, if they give us an all-inclusive price, then we say, hey, out of all of that, we're just gonna do this, 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 and that. So the rest is probably gonna be performed by DPW. Yeah. So that's another thought. If they give us a complete proposal indicating everything that they're gonna provide, so we just review the items that DPW won't be able to do. And then we see what the price is.
So has Bob had a chance to look at the plans, either before they were bid or after they were bid, and say, yes, this is what I can do, this is something I can't do? Has he sort of defined what he's willing or able to do at this point, based on what the drawings show?
Do you agree?
I've only had the discussion with Andrew. I
price,
don't know if
same price.
I just curious to see if there's a big difference between what the drawings show the town's going to do versus what Bob is capable of doing with his resources, that's all. We don't know.
I mean, again, Bob,
I mean, that should have been
We
a
keep
coordination issue at some point before it was bid.
The
Should have been clear
the
that,
specifications are clear, what the owner's to provide, and that specification section was given to Andrew. Andrew said he reviewed it with the DPW, and they agreed with the wording in the spec. How much more coordination are we supposed to do?
But that's
I mean,
fine, I didn't hear that that had happened. It
Yeah,
didn't seem like,
there's the language. Get this reviewed. The language was accepted, the scope was accepted, and that's how it went out to bid.
Well, something changed. I mean, either the DPW didn't understand the full amount associated with this work, or Andrew didn't adequately communicate it to them. Either way, we are where we are.
And that's contributing to, yeah, and I would agree with Matt, it's contributing to some of these items. Some of the items like rock, you know, is
Well,
unanticipated.
would have been
That would have been
unforeseen
there.
for
It would have
anybody.
been for anybody.
regardless.
We know
Right.
that.
We hit
Yeah.
rock in trenches and we hit rock that we needed to remove. That's an unforeseen. That's what we have contingency for. But transferring scope over to the general contractor, I'm afraid is gonna cost you versus doing it through your own subs or.
Well,
So-
I'm only speaking for me, but I thought there was a clear understanding of exactly what we could and we could not handle.
What are the logistics?
If I remember Andrew, and I know he's not here to defend himself in that conversation, which is unfortunate, but I distinctly remember conversations, and I suspect I got the minutes, I'll go back and reflect on it, but he made it very clear that had been adequately communicated, and it sounds like it was not.
Two other things that have adjusted some of this as well is that we were told back in February of 16 that the town could use its DPW and not pay them prevailing wage, which was incorrect, which I think that factors into part of this. And also, excuse me, I just lost my train of thought. It was, one of the issues, and the other part was that I asked Andrew over and over again, is the legality behind using subs on a project that was commercially bid. It's almost like it's bid breaking because you didn't include it, but you're gonna go over $50,000 on a line. So we're just adding more and more general bids to this job, because you can't have contractors doing all this work without,
Depends on what your scope is, though. If you, as a town, say for paving, you take bids on paving to do work within your town, you can use that paving bid
And that
to
might
pave that parking
be
lot.
about the only thing that we do have a scope that large on.
All right, so that, yeah, it's not so clear as to you can't do this. There are certain things you can and can't do.
But the idea was is to save money, and it was presented that it'd be easy for us to do it, and it wouldn't cost us anything extra, but we don't have the equipment, and we don't have the manpower. So there are a lot of factors that are involved with the DPW on top of their very full work schedule already. So, and again, from conversations I've had with McGee, is that didn't realize the full scope of what was being asked of them.
All right, so why don't CDR and I and DPW and Matt sit down together?
I agree.
And
I agree.
if we have to start from scratch, we'll start from
Yes,
scratch.
I agree.
I think part of to go back to that early, unless we want to beat that one up anymore, to go back to that earlier conversation, we'll beat that one up. The two things that I think we need to talk about are, A, the taking out the slab, was it the $33,000? We need to talk
33.
about what's the outcome of that going to be? And then the other issue that we've talked about a little bit right in the beginning of the beginning of the meeting is, the time and materials work. John, you said you're going to match up to your logs versus what they're doing, but it seems to me the process should be we should be stopping them if they're not going to you in the when they're starting this type of thing, right? I mean, am I missing something?
No?
And I know generally in the past, every slip gets signed by the project manager, on the way in, on the way out, in the beginning and the end. Every truck that's coming in and leaving is getting signed by that project manager to make sure that they're in control of the site, I understand the contractor's in control of the site, but you guys have to be managing it just as well to know exactly who's coming and going, who's working there, the hours that they're working there, the equipment that they're using. And it just doesn't seem like, I don't know if that's happening.
It is happening.
I have it in my daily report.
Yeah, it's happening.
I know that we didn't get anything on taking up the whole slab. That was just a decision that, by the sounds of it, Andrew made.
No. There was, BC Construction came to us we had it on our drawings to take out portions of the slab.
Yep.
They came to us requesting if they could take out the entire slab, and we said, it's approved method at contractor's risk, at no additional cost to the owner.
So that was stated in writing?
So that's why I say we have not seen the paperwork on this. I have not seen it personally, to see what they're claiming. But if it's just additional concrete because he removed the slab,
Yep.
No, he's asking for labor and everything.
then we're not approving it.
Yeah, you haven't approved any of these. These are just,
No, no.
and you haven't even seen the backup with the change order
Exactly.
request. Right. And I thought this was discussed at a prior meeting. I
Yes, it
thought
was.
they came in after and it was mentioned that, he wants to just rip the whole slab out. It's going to be easier, no additional cost. And we said, great. But obviously, if he's looking for additional
So
costs.
he can
now, we'll see
request
what it is.
whatever he wants to request. It still has to go through a review and approval and sign off.
So the first comment on this, in the description, is additional concrete for slab that was removed as directed by the OPM, Andrew Pellegrini. Right, the first sentence.
Where is it, Sandra?
Right here. And Andrew, I can attest to that Andrew was telling him nonstop that he wasn't happy that it was going to be Swiss cheese and it was the right thing to do. And I kept hearing it's the right thing to do, and he was going to make it work. So,
It's not a conversation we've had.
well, unfortunately, there's a $34,000 problem, or $36,000 problem with that, 34.
Well, for the record, we are not authorized to make that kind of decision. We are not the designer of a record. And for me, that's very hard to take, because that is no part of our professional behavior. The only person that is authorized to make decision to the documents, it is the architect of record, not the OPM. So,
Al, I'm not trying to beat you up, but even this change order, the very first change order we had, Andrew ordered it in without talking to anybody, which he's not allowed to in his documentation. Under the contract, he's not allowed to order materials. That's the very first change order we had was something he did. Which is-
I'm glad that I'm listening to all of this right now, for the first time. Not for the first time. I heard something, but this is the time that I'm having confirmation of what happened.
Well, we just got these today, so it's kind of confirming to us what we saw, what was going on. We weren't having a good comfort zone.
Well, this is,
So Brian, just to back up, a minute ago, you said you had some documentation on the slab issue. And what is that correspondence? Is that from you to,
It's between
contractor?
BC Construction and our office.
Do we email or?
Well, we have two methods of communication. One's an RFI, request for information,
Yep.
and the other's the ASI, Architectural Supplemental Instructions. So those two documents are questions coming from the contractor is the RFI, and then answers coming back, or additional directives going back to the contractor, it would be an ASI. So we'd look in those two paths of communication to find out.
And those communications clearly state that there's no additional cost.
Yes, that was our communication with BC Construction.
so it was giving them the go-ahead, provided there was no additional cost to it?
Right.
That's fine. All right. So got it documented.
Now, I know that Andrew explained the change order for the reprocessed material to backfill. He was here at the time. I think he explained it to you as a group. You understood the explanation.
no, not discarding that, but it was
Yeah, it was another
unauthorized to be done.
directive. Yeah.
I was asking forgiveness, not permission. It was after the fact. It made sense,
Yeah, it
and I
made
think we
sense.
all agreed it did make sense, but in terms of the process, it doesn't seem like it followed.
Yeah, and I think that's all we're getting at, is the whole process here. It's just, hasn't been followed along the way a normal construction project goes. So, I think I argued the whole time to take the whole thing out, the slab, just because I think it was the right thing to do, instead of cut it all up. But,
Yeah, at least that part was probably done just in the spirit of getting things moving along, but we've sort of made provisions for that as a committee and appointed, I think Bob, Jack, and Matt as authorized to approve up to a certain amount of change order, instead of sort of Andrew doing that on his own, and we gave this sort of subcommittee the authorization to do that, I believe, at some point, when those issues
did.
came up, to keep things moving along, so you didn't have to wait for a decision from the full committee, so.
So, Matt, with this new information, or at least clarification, where, at least as we had an understanding that the site work, we have an unknown at this particular point in time, taking that out of the equation, how close are we to what we anticipated in terms of costs associated with this project? Do you have any feel for that? Because it seems like it's a little different than the conversation you and I had earlier today.
Seems like we need
Somebody needs to be
Brian
able to tell us
to
that.
look at that 103,000 or a portion of it and then see if that's, I think we're gonna push that down some, hopefully.
Yes.
So I don't know. I don't mean to answer for you, Matt, but I'm not sure Matt can answer that without
Okay.
that happening first.
And to see the differential
And the roof,
between.
the
those
roofing
site
is
work
no
costs.
longer a question or concern.
The roofing's never been an issue in our office,
Well,
no.
but okay.
Keeps coming back to us. So
I mean, we get a general contract that
But I-
says it's not there, and.
But I'm not saying that you won't see a PCO request for it. Just like you might see a PCO request, but a potential change order.
They can request
for
anything. The
concrete
issue,
slab.
the issue
Right.
is it's not going to get approved.
They can request anything they want to request.
Right.
It
I
still has
understand
to
that.
go through a review, approval, before you even see anything to sign for.
So the
but you're confident that the roof is in the spec so that we shouldn't have a major, maybe there'll be a minor change order, but there won't be a $600 to $1 million change order.
Because they may claim they missed it in their bid is not the reason to submit a change request for it.
Well, I would ask, why would there be any change order requested for this? It's on them.
They could always ask.
Well,
That's the request.
okay.
They can request anything they want.
Well, I understand.
but I can point out in the specifications where it is.
We'll take that off the worry list.
But our drawings aren't perfect either.
What?
I'm here to say that too. Our drawings aren't perfect either. Change orders happen.
I understand.
It's gonna be a long process of getting the project done, and you're gonna look at me and go, how did you miss that? And I'm gonna say, it was stupid. That happens.
Right, it's just, we just don't want the major.
We understand that, but, you know,
There's gonna be a whole process.
I mean,
that we
not
go-
having a roof would solve the air conditioning problem for a temporary. I understand, but, you know, it is sort of a major item.
Well, Mike is at the plant right now, and I think it's Arkansas or somewhere in the Midwest. And he's getting instructed on how to install the roof panels and the wall panels.
Right.
The schedule for fabrication of the panels for this project is mid-October, which Mike was really anxious to get that schedule. If they fabricate in mid-October, he should be seeing panels arriving on site early November. He needs the wall panels. He's not so interested, he's not really critical to get the roof panels because he has a roof on it right now that doesn't leak. If he can get the wall panels on and button the building up for the winter, they have a lot of work to do inside the building through the winter, and they're gonna heat it, and they're gonna just go at it from the inside all winter. So you're gonna see what's gonna happen in November is wall panels go on, and then it's gonna look like nothing's happening, because no one's gonna be doing site work, and the building's gonna sit there with wall panels on it. But all the work is gonna be done inside the building, and then springtime comes, they'll convert back to site work, and at that time, they may be putting the roof on. We don't have to take the existing roof off, we're putting new panels on top.
Do we know what site work needs to be done between now and the winter? Are there specific things that need to get done now?
The only thing that's critical for them to proceed is getting the slab poured, so they need to get some under slab, all the under slab work done now.
And prior to that happening, we've got to get all the piping in there for all the conduits for the electrical, the fiber optics. We got to get the water line in there.
Yeah,
The two different water lines and the gas line, which we got to get that done. But one of the other things on the roof, though, is, the manufacturer is saying that they were never contacted by your company before you spec'd it, and that you're not supposed to have a vapor barrier on it, because it will ruin their product. And then there's a question of whether or not
I don't know who you're talking to.
BC, Mike Cresta.
Oh,
I'm just putting it out there, because what we're hearing, we have questions when we hear that information that, he's saying you should get a credit back for the vapor barrier because you're not supposed to put one down before it.
I spent $3,500 to get Kirby Engineering involved in this project as a consultant to me. And we followed their recommendations on the drawings.
Kirby is the manufacturer of the building or of the panels?
Kirby's the manufacturer of the metal building.
But they're not the one who make the panels.
Kirby Engineering has recommended the panels for the walls and the roof, and I specified what they recommended. That's their business, that's what they do. The submitted wall panels and roof panels that I specified are the ones that BC Construction submitted for our approval. So no, I didn't contact the panel manufacturer. I hired the metal building manufacturer. And they recommended to me what panels to specify. So there may be some truth in that I didn't contact the metal panel manufacturer, but
They're also concerned about how we're going to fasten them through the other roof, because how are they going to properly torque things down if they're going through multiple layers of...
they've submitted now this system that we have on our drawings that we reviewed. It's called a roof hugger system. That's what they utilize, and that's what Kirby Engineering recommended that we use. So there may be a lot of talk going around that I'm not aware of, but
Well,
I
again,
can
never
try
see
to-
you.
try to, I'm available. I'm here.
Well, that's why, if Mike was here today, we would have been bringing it up with Mike standing there, because, we're hearing this stuff and it's concerning. So we want to get the answers to it, you know?
All right.
And get all the information out on the table.
I'll
And
tell
we're
you
not
what,
looking to hide anything. We want to make sure that it gets built and it gets built right and as quickly as we can get it done.
So the next site meeting is 2 weeks, is that right? We're
Yeah,
doing
the
that?
17?
So
So we have,
we should
Yeah,
start
we-
having those every, you know,
we did get our structural engineer involved to review the fastener and the gauge of the steel that they're gonna use. We're getting the submittals and we're getting them back to BC. But we're not reviewing these submittals assuming that this is a change order. We're reviewing these submittals and comparing them to our drawings and specifications.
So
Now-
can we ask the question again about the vapor barrier? Because, I mean, if that's something that's going to deteriorate the roof over, you know, quicker than it should be,
Bob, I believe there's an ASI, and I'll go back and confirm, but I believe there's an ASI that deletes the vapor barrier requirement. I can confirm that, but it's going from, that one's going from memory. But I can verify that.
I mean, he also said it would be better if the roof panels were taken off the roof prior to putting on this new system, just because of the torque going into this new roof system is better and it's smoother than going over an existing roof because it's not gonna lay as flat. It's just the comments that were.
We had a conversation with Kirby Building about that. Because we have to install new purlins.
Mhm.
They have purlins right now at 10 feet on center. These are what's supporting the roof panels. And at 10 feet on center, that doesn't give you the load requirement that you need for a police department, or it doesn't provide the sufficient load carrying capacity if you want to go out and put photovoltaic panels on the roof. And the roof that you have there now doesn't carry the insulation value that you're looking for. So we did approach Kirby and their engineering department. What do you recommend? Just take it all off and replace it, or can we go over? And we went back and forth on that answer. It wasn't one clear direction to take it off completely or to replace it, or to go over. The final conclusion was to keep it in place and go over. But they have this system, and they called it a roof hugger system, which is designed to take, right now, the roof panel has a profile to it, so it's not a flat surface, so you can't connect directly down because you don't have a constant plane.
Mhm.
But this system, which is a patented system called a roof hugger system, takes the profile of the panel and consistently gives you a level plane to fasten your new roof panels to. It's almost like a purlin system on top of your existing metal roof. Your 10-foot on center supports underneath the panels, we have to reduce to 5 feet on center. So we're inserting a whole nother support member on that structural steel. Our initial concern was, can you actually physically get that additional purlin up there and install it between the top of structural steel and the bottom of the roof panel? Can you physically get it up there and install it? And they've told us, yes, you can. You can put them up there, you can rotate them into place, and then you can fasten to them. So that didn't require the roof to completely come off. We thought that that would have been a requirement, that you would have to take the panels off because you couldn't get that additional purlin in there to create a 5-foot on center space. But they've assured us that no, it's a Z configuration member that goes up, you put it in horizontally, you can rotate it vertically, and then you can fasten it in place. So with that, there was no real need to take that existing roof off. It wasn't deteriorating, it still had a membrane that was viable to remain. So that would continue to be what you're looking at when you're looking up. The new panels are now about this thick. They come fully insulated. There's rigid insulation in the panels, so they're pretty heavy. That's why we had to go to the 5-foot on center spacing.
Mhm.
So they lay the new panels down. The system of roof huggers will be there, and you fasten through the panel, but you don't, they're not exposed fasteners. Once you fasten the panel down, the next panel comes across and conceals the fastener. What you have out there now is a system that you have exposed fasteners, and that was always my concern. Every time you put a screw through, there's a potential for a leak. And the roof that's out there now, all your fasteners are exposed. So those are gonna be covered, and all the fasteners for the new roof system are concealed. So that's the system that we're having installed. So that was all recommended through Kirby Manufacturing, the metal building. And they're the ones that engineered that structure out there. And as a side note, the engineer that signed off on the drawings for that building is still working and is the person we were talking to at Kirby, the original engineer for that structure.
But he doesn't work for the panel manufacturer who's,
No.
And there's no problem with the airspace between the existing roof and the
I got it.
insulation?
No,
Condensation's not gonna build up in there at all.
no, because the insulation's on top.
No, I know that, but generally, even in the residential code, they want it tight without strapping based on the new code, so.
No.
Can I bring up one other thing? Did you get the note about putting in the solar future, some pipes in there, running them into the electrical room to the outside to a disconnect for future? Did you send a directive to them or anything?
No, it has to do, and I think the one you're referring to has to do with the antenna cabling coming from the tower.
No, this is for future solar. I mean, the whole intent
no.
was to hopefully put solar on that roof. If we put in the
Infrastructure now?
infrastructure now, just the piping into the electric room.
If you can tell me exactly what you want, then we can accommodate it, but unless I have some directive as to that's the location and that's the size, it's a guessing game. These panels could always be cut in the field.
No, I'm talking about putting them in through the floor, before the floor gets poured, you know, so that we can put it in the electric room where there's space to be able to put the inverter in the future, if that's
Oh,
where it's going.
No,
If I may interject, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go
for
ahead.
solar, the utility company requires a outside disconnect for the solar utility so they can disconnect the solar, and there needs to be a conduit from the MDP where the future breaker is. Outside through the slab to that disconnect has to be on the outside of the structure. And,
but you have to go underground to do that? Couldn't you
well,
go
it's
just
so
through the
tight in
wall?
that room now, I don't see there's any way to do that in the future, so I was hoping that you people would look at that. And the location for that disconnect would be next to the metering equipment.
Do you have more information you can give me as size of conduit or anything that,
I'll work on that with Bob
Hmm.
and Matt.
Okay.
had you sent me that before? I don't remember seeing.
Yeah, I think Matt did.
I don't know if I sent that, we talked about it, I don't think I forwarded because I didn't want to add any more value to, any more costs to.
You blew me off, huh?
I did.
Well, that's why I asked, does it have to go underground? Because anything underground right now is costing us money instead of just going through the wall.
Well, right now, we have to go through that wall for the conduits for the fiber optics. So they're coming in two different locations on the foundation. So the one on we were planning on doing is going where the water is coming in. They're gonna dig a trench there and most likely have to blast to get that water in. And they're gonna end up opening up the foundation to put those pipes through. And then at that same corner, open it up again for the fiber optic line. So I thinking if we can do it at the same time, then that would be the cheapest way to do it. So we still have time if we can send it to you tomorrow or something, and then we could get it out if the board's in agreement.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask
Yep.
one more question on the solar? Brian just explained how the roof system works, and I question if that roof it can support the weight of the solar, but is there a way to attach to that roof? Is it standing seam? Because on standing seams, you can attach to the seams, but if it's a flat roof,
It's a
they would
standing
have to
seam.
penetrate it.
No, it has a standing seam.
Oh, it does have a standing seam. Okay, thank you.
We've factored in another 5 pounds per square foot for solar. So if you're within that 5 pounds per
It's
square
usually
foot.
about 3 pounds.
Okay. So, you and Peter will work on that?
Yep.
Okay. Any other?
I have another question.
Anybody got some good
I
news?
got another question.
Yep.
As far as the HVAC system goes,
Yes.
you sent that to Mitsubishi to see what the differences are based on?
No, we sent it to our engineers, RDK. Our engineers haven't finished their review of the submittal. But as a kind of a preemptive, I've gone back to BC Construction and asked them to inquire through Apex if what's the price differential to go back to the specified product. We may want that information, we may not need that information, but I just thought, let's get in front of this a little bit. If we come back and state the submittal does not meet the specified product, then it just goes back to BC to resubmit. If the engineers do come back, though, and say it meets the performance criteria of the specification, then it comes back to you. It doesn't go back to BC Construction. It would come back to you to say, we're ready to approve this, but you could get Mitsubishi for X, whatever that differential is. It would be back for you to decide. So we haven't returned the submittals, we haven't finished reviewing the submittals, but we understand the concern with not having the specified manufacturer. We have a carrier submittal right now that we're looking at.
So based on that carrier submittal, I know that we don't have a whole lot of room in the ceiling height there. So and I understand we're getting the cartridges that we're able to open up from that level, change the filter, do whatever, any maintenance that had to be done. I didn't think Carrier had that same ability. And the other part of it was the piping that they pipe
Piping is larger.
quite a bit larger.
If they have an ability, if they still have an ability to get it installed into the building, though, we don't have a basis of rejection, just because it's a larger pipe.
The thing I was concerned about is they're gonna use Zoom lock to do that? Zoom lock fittings? Hasn't there been ups and downs with that?
Oh, it's like a pro press.
I understand, but weren't they like recalled for a while and they were having issues with the gasketing and?
When it first came out.
And it's a good product for,
Engineers are specifying it now because it's cutting down on labor time on installations. And if we can specify a product that cuts down on labor, then pricing of the project comes down for the owner. So we have to think about that and what we're specifying, because if we're specifying something that's very labor intensive, all this prevailing wage installations, the price of construction gets much higher for you to install. So the contractors are trying to find a way to get installs that are less labor intensive. And that's, a lot of engineers are going to specify it that way for these types of fittings.
just clarifying that all the, 'cause they weren't here for this, the EC is no longer doing a lot of the data running, the cabling, but to clarify, they're definitely doing all the hard piping. It's not gonna be a change order.
That's, again, our interpretation of the plans and specs that we're getting back to Griffin, and they need to sign. We just need to come to an understanding of what they own and what they don't own. The electrical contractor owns all of the drawings except the technology drawings.
Telecommunications.
The T drawings are the telecommunication drawings.
So the security that's going to the doors, like the doors from the Sally Port area into the hallways and the lockup area, that's piping that's gonna be going through the concrete. So, Griffin owns that in your drawings, you're
They own
saying?
back boxes and conduits.
But they're contesting that, though.
This originally came to my attention when they contested the under slab conduits that are indicated on the drawings. Now, my quick answer to Griffin was, no, you own that. It's the way we intended to bid it, it's the way we bid it, you own that. It was only until they pointed out addendum number 1, which we issued a clarification in addendum number 1, that they've interpreted now to mean they don't own that. The T drawings,
Just the T drawings.
the T drawings.
So how does that get worked out? Because I mean, Griffin's done a lot of projects, and, you know,
Yeah.
this is what they live on, is change orders, and, you know,
We need to point out to them on the drawings where they do own scope, and we can accept their interpretation. We really have to act impartially. I know that my check comes from you, and I invoice you, but we do have to act impartially between protests from the contractors and what the owner wants. You've hired me, but if you tell me to go and instruct the contractor to do something, I still have to look at plans and specs and say either they're right or you're right. I have to be that arbiter of those issues. Now, they've pointed out addendum number 1. I can see what they're referring to, and I can agree that that's added confusion in where they can interpret that. But I can't say that that's true for all the other scope. Now I'm saying that I'm acting on behalf of the owner to say, no, you own this. Just as I'm telling them they don't own something. Oh,
well,
it's
you're
not
the
like-
one who's writing these.
I know, it comes down to my product.
Yeah, so between working for the town and working for the contractor, I mean, it comes down to, are you right or is Griffin right? And who's gonna actually make that determination?
Yeah, I guess
When
when does that
Griffin says, "I'm not
argument get
doing it."
resolved, I guess is.
Huh?
Yeah,
And there has been
so another way to say
conversation.
it is, when does that question get to put to bed? I mean, are you still negotiating that with them, or?
Not as far as I'm concerned.
Can I ask what was in addendum 1 that changed?
Yeah, and now it gets legal. So take a deep breath, sit back, relax. Within the projects, we had the electrical scope it's a filed sub-bid. We had division, which is division 26 in the specification is electrical. We had division 27 in the spec, which is telecommunications. And within division 27, it was referring to the technology drawings. The technology drawings had all the camera locations, card access systems, and those are the systems that we had always talked about the owner's going to be providing. We had in the bid specs that the electrical contractor was to name their sub for Division 27. They had to identify them in the bid form. Who are you using for Division 27? The question came in the bid period, do we have to name the sub if the owner is going to be doing those installations? Why would we have to be naming a sub? It says here it's all by, those systems are by the owner. It's a good, valid question. They were confused as to why they have to name this sub. So our answer in the addendum was, no, you do not have to identify your subcontractor for telecommunications because those systems are going to be furnished and installed by the owner. When that answer came out in the addendum, they then did not name the sub at the time of bid, and they've deleted that scope from their bid. Where we probably made an incorrect answer to that question is on those drawings, in addition to the access control, the cameras, and all the other security systems, on that drawing was the wiring for the telephone and data. On other drawings, it states they need to provide back boxes and conduits and everything for the telecommunications vendor. So this is our interpretation that while they didn't have to name the sub, their drawings state that they still have to provide it for the telecommunications vendor.
But on the addendum, it says remove telecommunications. So that's the scary part is, aren't they described in the drawings for the electrical as telecommunications conduits? Because,
For the telecommunications vendor, yeah.
but the conduits that they're supposed to be putting in the slab and the walls and in all the structure, that's indicated as telecommunications, correct? And they're saying right on there, it says remove telecommunications.
As far as the equipment and the
But where does it say that at?
Submittals.
It's very vague, it just says remove telecommunications, and that's where I understand the big problem is, because that's a massive problem. Not just running cable data to telephones.
the answer they asked was, do we have to name the subcontractor? The answer we gave them was, no, they don't.
But with the subcontractor put in the conduit.
No, it's on the electrical drawings. So logically, just as any arbitrator would do, the electrical contractor still owns the electrical scope that's on their drawings. We can agree now that, okay, we've eliminated the T drawings in Division 27. But if you read Division 26, Division 26 clearly states they are to provide all the conduits, back boxes, pull strings for Division 27.
And the T drawings don't show the conduit and wires, or they do?
They don't.
They don't. It's
They
only
just show
shown on
device
the-
locations.
So has he submitted another RFI for clarification on that? It was just
No.
discussion?
No, it's been just discussion.
If they're not shown on the T drawings and you eliminate the T drawings, then
The scope that we have, that we intended the electrical contractor to carry in their scope was the wiring for the telephone and data. That's on the T drawings, in addition to the camera's access control that we were getting. So now that that's been brought to our attention, we are preparing the security bid now, which we've been directed to go out to bid with, get competitive bids for all your integrated technology. We've now included in that scope the telephone and data wiring. So we can get that included and back into the project scope in a competitive manner.
Okay, that actually makes sense.
It's Cat 6 for telephone and data. It's Cat 6 wiring for security systems. So from the chief's office, for instance, he's going to need telephone, data, and security wiring, all pulled back to the head end location. Your security contractor is now going to pull all of that as one pull. It's not going to be Griffin's going to do theirs, and then the security contractor is going to install theirs. It's going to be one contractor, all Cat 6.
So
To-
what's this?
To boxes that are already there by the electrical contractor.
Yeah, they better be there. They
So-
own them.
So just going back to my original question. So if they don't do it because they disagree with you, what's the answer to that?
Well, then it gets to be a protest. They can protest the work, and then you have to go to a mediation or an arbitrator, or you get a clarification through the Attorney General's office.
So you give them a directive to move forward, they have to move forward with it.
I give them the direction, they will then respond saying, we're going to move forward under protest.
And that hasn't happened yet?
No.
So when does that actually get sent out?
Hopefully never.
Yeah, we're not, hopefully never. They can always, just like they can submit a request, they can always protest. We will direct them to do the work. They will then respond saying, we're going to do it under protest, holding open their right for a claim, and then that gets resolved later.
So was that the intent of why they sent the notice that, they're being held up now?
One of the items that they sent in that was the under slab conduits. That was on the T drawings. We asked Griffin for a price to install that under slab conduit to get that installed now.
Under slab conduit for what?
For all of the electrical going from the electrical room to the second floor data rooms. Both the PD data room and the MEC data room.
And what is that for?
For all of the fiber optics and electrical to get, it's through the 2-hour rated shaft to get to the COPS termination on the second floor for utilities.
So what's the status and schedule for that separate bid? When's that going out? When do you expect it in? And does it impact the overall schedule if they're waiting for that to happen?
It should not impact the overall schedule. Seeing that we're, in our interpretation, you have back boxes and conduits already installed for it. We would want to have a contractor to start submittals next year on those devices and whatever systems are going to get installed. So the items that are holding up construction right now is anything that's under slab. We have 4 conduits. That's all that we need to get in before the slab gets poured. The schedule for the bid is, we have the drafts prepared. It's in the hands of both Matt and Mike Yang and Gary Primo. We want to make sure they've seen it and they understand it and they have a chance to comment on it. So when we get comments back, we can incorporate. And then it's a question of, the question I have for you, do we need to go just get 3 numbers, or are we doing central registry and everything for it?
Well, it depends on
Depends
how
on
much.
the value.
Yeah.
What's the estimated cost?
Over 200,000.
Yeah, and you have to fit in.
You've got to go bid.
Yeah. I think
Then
it's
we'll get-
under 50, you can get 3 prices, right?
Yep.
So-
You still have to put, yeah.
Then we'll have to go central register and,
And you're going to run that? 'Cause I know Andrew did it last time, didn't he? It's with
yeah,
Mike.
the OPM had put it in the central register last time. We did all the invitation to bid language.
But who's going to be putting it in the central register, and who's going to be overseeing that?
It doesn't matter. As long as one of us does it, we'll come up with dates. And we'll probably want it out there at least 3 weeks for a review and bid.
But is it not accurate to state that Griffin's looking for direction, how to run things, and questions from?
If Griffin's looking for any direction, if any subcontractor is looking for any direction, we have an RFI process for that. Any questions, come to us in an RFI. So if anybody's looking for direction on the job site, and McGuire knows this too, if they even come to ask them a question, they don't have the authority to answer that. It's put it in an RFI to the architect. That's the process. So if we respond to those in as timely as we can, whatever RFI comes to us, if it's engineering related, that goes to RDK. If it's structural related, it goes to our structural engineer. So that's the process. We have not received any RFIs.
Where are we at with
Well,
this staircase?
The staircase. Staircase is BC's concern, not our concern.
Well, it's part of the concern of pouring the floor, so.
We have in our specification, it's stairs that, in 2 locations that go from first floor to second floor for, we specify the rise of the run the subcontractor for the stairs is responsible for the structure of that stair. They have to engineer and put together the structural steel, how they're gonna support the stair
For your approval.
for our approval. The first submittal on that stair, they were extending the structure for the stair beyond the fire rating of the stair enclosure. So we rejected it. They came back to us, why did you reject it? Well, obviously, it went right through the firewall, so we rejected it. So their structural engineer for the stair has been working to come up with a solution on how he's going to install the stair. I think they've had 3 attempts so far. And every attempt that they give us, we're rejecting it. Some because the second attempt, they were narrowing the width of the stairs to get their structure support. There's no need to reduce the width of the stair. We need certain widths for egress. And he was minimizing the width of the stair beyond what they needed for egress. Again, you can't do that. So we rejected it. Where BC Construction is concerned with this is wherever they conclude their structure, they're going to need some footings. And on our drawings, we show footings that say coordinate with stair subcontractor. Because wherever they put their supports for the stair, that's where the footing needs to go. So they have not given us a design yet for the stair that's acceptable to us. So there's no way to locate where those footings are going. So Mike's getting concerned now because he can't put his footings in, and he can't pour his slab
You can't build your walls, you can't do a lot of things.
because the stair subcontractor has not concluded how he's going to build this yet. Again, we're just waiting for information. We're being patient. We're not designing the solution for him to say, that's where you need your column, that's where you need your footing, because then we take responsibility for the whole design. We're getting drawings, and we're getting them signed and sealed by their engineer, saying they take responsibility for the design. We can sign off on it, meets our dimensional requirements, and it doesn't compromise the firewall, the fire-rated enclosure. The first submittal, Bob, he was putting his columns within the fire-rated wall. So if we have 2 layers both sides, he was going through the 2 layers, and his column was in the middle of the assembly. Well, that compromises the fire rating of the stair enclosure. So you can't just bury your column in the middle of the assembly because now you've compromised the assembly.
So do you give them a directive, though, time-wise, time's running out, you know?
No, Mike does.
Yeah,
That's
what
where
I figured.
that's where Mike gets, it's his schedule.
Let's go.
Okay.
And I know Mike was concerned because the structural engineer was going on vacation for a couple weeks, and some things you can control, but some things you can't. So yes, Mike needs to know where that footing's gonna go for his stair before he can pour it. And we're still sitting here going, give us a design that we can review.
But it's Mike's responsibility to get that design?
Yeah. He knows it.
What else is holding up pouring the slab other than that?
Is the elevator resolved?
I think it's
No,
resolved.
the elevator was, it was
Well,
just he
this-
was having difficulty with the subcontractor.
Were you talking to someone?
Yeah, so as of yesterday, it still wasn't resolved. I don't know if they were going to have a conversation in the afternoon. This and Krupp wanted him to sign a, basically a side agreement, trying to withhold any liability after the job's done. And Mike wouldn't accept that, nor would Mike's insurance. So they were going back and forth on how they could resolve and have both parties satisfied, but it didn't look good.
It seems like Mike's right on this issue, so.
What are they trying to get at?
Basically, they're limiting any damage, liability, any damages after their job is complete. But where if they did something incorrect, they're off the hook. They're trying to transfer it on to Mike. So if they assembled something incorrect and something got and they're saying, well, we give you a year warranty. But it doesn't. I mean, they want to do the job and walk away and not have any liability on it,
That's what it sounds like.
which Mike is saying that
Nice
it's
deal if you can get away with it.
against MGL.
I think he had some other clauses in there that they wanted 50% payment up front or something like
They
that,
want to
too.
retain
and
it
it's
or
like-
something like
It
that.
all, but it all came down to that topic. Is that-
That's a separate file sub-bid, right?
No.
The elevator?
It was originally a filed sub-bid we received no bids on.
Oh,
So we included the allowance,
Okay.
and Mike received the proposal directly.
okay. So this is through him then, so that's his issue. And he could always go somewhere else, right?
You have to adjust the allowance again.
And we've already done the pit, right?
Other manufacturers can conform to that pit dimension. I'm not too concerned about the pit dimension. They all kind of have, they buy cabs from the same place. You might think that Otis is different than Tyson Crypt is, you know, they all buy the cabs from the
Cabs,
same.
There's also concern now with extra lines being run in for the fiber. Have you talked to them at all?
Saw something from Mike.
But is there going to need to be a drawing? I mean,
Again, it's another vendor.
but why are we
That
have these?
was-
My problem is we have these other vendors that weren't included in the project, and these keep changing
It
things.
was, again, I don't want to throw Andrew under the bus, but it was another contractor who Andrew was coordinating with the MEC. They had the drawings, they coordinated, you even had proposals from them to run lines from here to there. They knew that they were bringing lines in.
So when they come into the building in two different locations, that drawing for the electrical room has a line of, I don't know, half a dozen pipes along one wall. Are those what are those all designated for?
We have two 4-inch conduits that could be used for telephone data, cable TV, fiber, but we have one 4-inch conduit is big enough for 3 interducts within a 4-inch conduit. So multiple utilities can go through that 4-inch conduit. It's not reserved for
But
one.
this is emergency communications, and how it's been laid out to us now is they can't be in. It's a whole chain, and if
But
they
that's-
can't be next to it.
But that's new information. I don't know
Again.
where this new information came from, or there's two directions.
That's coming from the fiber optic company that's doing it.
But
Is this a new idea, though?
no?
Because it was never an idea that was given to us. And if they had this intent, they never communicated that through Andrew to me, anybody.
Is that contract?
The fiber optics is contract, not
Yeah.
going into the
That's
building.
that's from Comtrack, and that's,
That the whole.
And maybe
reason-
they've come up with a new idea,
No,
which
they
is
said
fine.
the whole reason that they need multiple conduits going in at different locations is to protect it. So if they've made it in a pattern where it's in series, and it can go in either, or I don't know if it's series or parallel.
It's, unfortunately, it's a communication that, if they've had proposals to do this, Andrew's had discussions with the fiber people, installers. If they had this concept,
Well,
never was it conveyed that we need conduits here and here. Now, we can do it, obviously.
we could pay extra for it.
I think it's gotta be, I think it's a mech issue, right? It's not it's our issue that,
But the issue is, there's so much ledge up there, and they want to backfill. And we've asked them not to backfill until we figure out what's going on, which is another pause in the job, because they need to figure out how to get this in, which should have been included, and whether it was Andrew's directive, it's not, and now we have to come up with another plan, which will be another change order.
If anything on the drawings changes, the scope, that's how tight they bid these projects. You have to understand, they bid plans and specs. If anything changes, yes, you'll get a proposal with a dollar amount.
well, the MEC is responsible, with the contract's responsible to put that trench in
Right.
into the building. It's just where are they putting it in that electric room, I guess? Because it's gonna be coming in two different locations. One's in the corner, the other one's coming in with the other,
Well, Gary
cable lines.
Primo indicated to me that they're coming into the electrical room, but then they're going right into those underslab conduits that bring them right upstairs. So they're not gonna actually terminate. They're
So
gonna
they're
terminate
gonna-
upstairs.
So it's gonna be a continuous pipe running all the way through. It's not even gonna go into the electric room, it'll just go right underneath it,
It'll go in and come out,
it'll go in and come out.
yeah.
Okay. You need to come up into the electric room and not just go straight up? I'm just throwing it out there, because
I think for pull distance, it's almost like acting like a pull box. I think the distance might be too extreme. If you try to pull from the second floor all the way back to the street, that's a heck of a pull. I think they're gonna wanna pull into the electrical room, and then from there, pull to the second floor. So there's
well,
some,
it's a, you know, a 1/4-inch wire in a 4-inch pipe, so
yeah, but it's fiber though, so you don't wanna
stretch it, yep.
pull on that.
He also
Fiber.
indicated that they need to have their own chases. That they should not be disturbed, and if you're working on one, you should never disturb the other one.
So,
So we might,
we need to get technical people talking to technical people.
Well, we have 4, and Gary Primo just today said 4 is plenty. We have 4 4-inch conduits for him, going up the second floor. He said that's twice as much as he needs. That was at 2
That's
o'clock this
inside.
afternoon.
Can I ask one more technical question on a different note? The tower, we've talked about the manufacturer, Gary Primo's talked about buying a certain tower,
Mhm.
and it needs to be 24 by 24 feet by 2 feet thick or whatever with a mat in it. Can't that be, do you have to blast out the ledge? Or can't that be attached to the ledge and then poured?
Within Gary's bid package going out for the tower, he's including geotechnical engineering in his scope of work.
Okay, so,
So he is going out for the tower contractor to contract an independent geotechnical engineer to do borings at the tower location. And then with that data, they will then engineer the foundation. And whether it means rock has to be removed or rock doesn't have to be removed, that's within the scope of their tower contractor.
because Cresto wanted to go out there and just dig that up and blast it along with any other areas and do all the blasting at once, so that he can move on with the slab and everything else and not have that hinder the slab.
I don't see that it should hinder the foundations that I'm familiar with for a tower that size. They're about 16 foot square. They go down around 5 feet. So that's kind of your limit of, they don't go down 10 feet for those.
Well, he was
footings.
talking about going down 14 feet deep, and I'm thinking
No.
like, why do you have to go beyond the frost line?
Well, the-
5 feet and then go down the 2 extra feet for the size of the actual footing.
well, I reached out to the manufacturer, and I found out, because I thought there was a tower in order, and I asked them typical pad sizes, which they said it's per the tower, you can't, but it wouldn't be typical to have a 24 by 24, but they wouldn't give me a depth pad.
Yeah, we're putting one in right now. It's about 140-foot tower, and it's 5 feet down. But the reason that they need a geotechnical engineer to come in is footings are based on soil type. So the geotechnical engineer will take borings and determine soil types and rock elevations, and they will then design the foundation based on soil type. And bedrock, they'll take into account. Because trying to put up a tower in sand is different than trying to put up a tower in bedrock. So yeah, so they will design something either pinned to the rock that's there or determine that it has to come out. But I've installed towers right next to existing buildings and haven't had a problem removing rock. It depends on the hardness of the rock, yes. But I don't see how it's gonna impact Mike at all. Once we get a ground wire in, he should just forget about the tower.
Okay.
In my opinion. that contractor will come in and just be independent of everything Mike's doing. Now, it might be in his way, and we'll hear about it, but shouldn't impact what he's doing.
So in terms of getting this slab poured, the blasting next door is done this Friday, so that's not an issue anymore.
Sounds like Tuesday at the latest. Monday's a holiday.
Right, okay. So sometime next week, that'll go away. Still have an issue with the fiber optic where that's coming in, the stair foundation location.
That's on Mike.
That's on,
Water, gas,
but what's,
Two water lines.
2 different water lines coming into the building.
well, that's have to be installed, but that's nothing that we're waiting on. If they told them tomorrow that
Yes.
you needed to put the water and gas in, they could go and do it. It's not holding anything up in terms of.
Well, the problem is
likely
they
we're
have to
gonna have to
blast the
blast
ledge,
it.
we figure. We don't want to just,
Blast for everything, for all the utilities.
Mhm.
Let's do all the blasting.
so that way it doesn't disturb anything and cause
Again,
any.
that's all on him. That's nothing that,
Yeah, the unforeseen is the rock, that's all. The scope is there, it's the unforeseen is the rock.
do we carry any rock removal in the bid?
No, we didn't anticipate it.
Do you have any boring information at all beforehand?
The only boring information we had was before that that building was constructed.
And they didn't show any ledge? What's the
It sh-
foundation?
It did show ledge.
Okay.
They had a blast for the foundation.
So we had some idea that there was rock out there.
But all of the trenching and excavation was not within BC Construction's scope. So we wouldn't be carrying ledge in the general contractor's contract because he was not doing excavation. It was the owner,
Elevator
the owner
shaft,
was
so-
gonna have to deal with ledge if the owner encountered ledge. Not the contractor has to deal with the ledge. Now we're saying it's BC Construction's ledge to remove.
And did the site work that we were supposedly having the town perform include within the limits of the foundation? I thought it was just outside of
Outside.
the footprint.
We
So
had the-
any blasting inside was always on the contractor.
No, they didn't anticipate rock
Any
any.
excavation
Yeah.
inside?
Right,
They did.
right, right,
But if we had carried a rock quantity, we'd at least have a price for it.
right.
All that was carried was money for materials for the outside, correct? Not labor or anything, right?
For materials,
Site work.
installed materials, yes.
So,
We had utilities only going 10 feet out, 10 feet outside the foundation line. That's all they were to install. Then the owner was gonna take them from 10 feet out the foundation wall to completion.
There was a utility trench there, wasn't there? I mean, just not
Yeah.
big enough for,
Yeah, there was a transformer pad already anticipated right where we're putting the transformer pad. There were some open excavations that were existing that were leading to that transformer pad.
but to answer, we need to, in the short term, make sense to dig all the holes for the holding tank outside the Sally Port, for the sewage ejector pit, gas water line,
The road.
the roadway coming down. We cleared it, but there's definitely ledge in there too, so we need to see where it's at and if there's a way we can get around it and reroute the road, but we need to figure that out real fast, because the idea is to blast all at once, and instead of having them mobilize over and over again and spending more money, have them do it once and then put it behind us. But
So do we have a plan for all that?
we're trying, well, today we just got this, and we're not anticipating that at all. So we're coming up with plans.
So, we plan to hopefully get back to progress next week. Hopefully.
The general contractor's not coming back until the blasting's completed.
All right.
We have asked for a price from Mike to put in the grounding wire from the electrical room out to the tower site. That would be a mech change order, though. That would be for It wouldn't be the town's change order.
And that doesn't change regardless of who the tower vendor ends up being.
Correct.
That's all they need, just a grounding wire to the electrical.
They're gonna install grounding at the tower itself, but we're just connecting it back to our building ground. And that scope was gonna be performed by the tower contractor, but since we don't have one yet, we need to pour the slab, so we need to get that grounding wire in.
So you want to try and meet this week about the DPW
Yeah,
site work?
yeah. It could be
Talk
available.
about that after this.
Could we meet a little sooner than we normally do, maybe the week after? He'll be back to work next week, right, Mike? Right?
Mhm.
So could we possibly meet the week after? Just, there's so many loose ends on this. It
Yeah,
would be
there's a lot of
nice.
balls in the air.
Yeah. So could we meet like 2 weeks from today,
Like the-
17th?
Yeah.
Some-
So,
Yeah, we have a progress meeting that day, so we come right from there to here.
so site meeting that
I
day?
just-
Yep.
Okay, 2:00?
2 o'clock,
2 o'clock.
And then we'll have a building meeting the same day, 4 o'clock.
right.
Okay.
What's the date? What was the date?
Yeah, I just,
17th?
17th, yeah.
Yep,
Thank you. I just think there's
oh, I agree.
a lot here.
Cole's waving high.
Don't forget about.
Just a question to Brian, where do we stand on the construction timeline at this point, given some of the problems with the
It's-
county?
June 30th.
That's a good question, and I'm glad, it's one we should talk about. We were given approval on a scheme for the fire department based on a cost estimate and based on what you saw as your budget. A lot of things that we talked about tonight, obviously, are affecting the budget for the police project, but it's also ultimately affecting the budget for both of these projects. So, one, we could take off down the road and continue with scheme C, but I don't know if you as a town feel comfortable at this point saying, do that, based on the budget concerns we might have on site work, or anything else that's happening at the police department at this time until the dust settles a little bit. And then revisit the overall budget.
Cole, are you asking about the police department schedule or the overall, the fire department schedule?
I think we're a little far afield. I just asked about the schedule for, I should have been more clear, but just, particularly just where we are with the police department now.
He's under contract for next June or June,
Yep.
but if you're adding site work to his scope, you can easily add probably 3 months to that. So I would say September for the police department. If he's performing site work, he's gonna ask for not only time, but, I mean, not only cost, but time
Extension.
extension.
He has to ask for that though, right?
Oh, sure.
Ahead of time, not just at the end say, well, now I need more time.
No, change orders are for both.
It's part of the change order.
We know 2 weeks from tonight, we will still have some open issues associated with bids. We don't know what those numbers will be.
Correct.
We'll have some more framework, hopefully, around the site work. So we, at least we'll have some feel for what we can do versus what he might do, although we may not know pricing around that. At what point can we, and I understand there may be something unforeseen that just develops, but taking that off the table, it would seem that the major issues, I mean, we are dealing with a shell of a building here. It would seem that the major issues associated with unknowns should be moving beyond us at this point in time. Is that fair? I mean, the granite, things of that nature, I know are all unforeseen, but
It's fair. I'm always more comfortable when we're out of the ground. And at this point, you're asking him to do site work, which won't be done until the spring, and we don't know the impact of rock.
I understand
on those
that. I'm
issues. So
taking.
We're not gonna be out of the ground when we all wanna be out of the ground.
Well, at what point will we have a reasonable expectation as to what we think the total cost of this will be?
By the end of the year,
By the end of,
end of 2017? which would still give us time, and we, thinking, I'm just saying September, police department moves, contractor can start at the fire station.
But wouldn't it be helpful to have at least a feel as quickly as possible as to what that range might be? I understand you can't nail it down, but can't we at least get this into some sort of a ballpark range, whatever that might be?
All the pricing at this point comes from BC Construction.
Well, the reason I'm asking is that, and I don't know this, we don't know this at this time, but if we need to make modifications to the police station, hypothetically, we need to know that fairly quickly. And so I guess I'm looking, at what point are we past the point of no return to be able to do that? So I'm making numbers up, but let's say all of a sudden we're $1 million over, making a number up. We can't absorb that. So we have to make some changes to this project as well. Where's the no return line on something like that?
It depends on what you want to change.
Well, but we don't know.
I don't know what,
That's the
I don't know
problem.
how I can give you a right answer on this. Some items, you've already reached the point of no return.
I know that. And the
other-
longer we go, the more of those items go on the list.
That's right.
That's my point. So we need to, as quickly as possible, have some understanding of what our exposure is. Maybe that's another way to say it.
I think you're gonna identify it in different chunks.
Okay?
You're gonna know soon what your exposure is on the site work, for instance. We've budgeted a number for the security, and we can then compare that to what bids are gonna come in November on that chunk. Those are your two biggest numbers. Other than that, it's change order activity, unforeseens, which I'm not seeing are gonna have any big impacts.
I wouldn't think. Once we get through,
Moving
as you say,
forward.
once we're out of the ground, I would think that most of those should
It's site work and it's
be
security.
reasonable. So then we should have a feel for this in the fairly near future.
I'm still December, probably. Those two components, you're gonna know site work first and you're gonna know security second.
When are we going to know site work?
I would hope Mike, he said he needs 2 more weeks. So
there was
now it's
the-
right a week.
By the
So
next
So
meeting.
can we shoot for 2 weeks from today?
I would hope 2 weeks
Yeah.
from today,
I
we're
think
gonna
I
know that
could-
site work.
Push them on that?
I
Yes,
asked him,
I-
So
I asked him
we'll
today for the
have some
numbers.
guidance on site work.
Correct, by
weeks
next,
from
by the
this-
17th.
And I think
So that
that's
leaves only that one other item.
the security.
And I would think that we ought to be able to get at least a ballpark neighborhood as to what we anticipate that to be.
Well, you
Well, our ballpark
You have an estimate.
is the
I
budget.
know, well,
is-
you've got an
yeah,
estimate there, but I mean, is it a reasonable ballpark or not?
I think so.
Okay, then, so really, the site work is really the open issue for us.
Yeah, we originally had intended on the security systems to install one system that was being utilized by police and utilized by the MEC. One system meaning one brain, one head end. And then off that brain and head end, we would run cameras to the MEC and access control to the MEC. We would run cameras and access control to the police department. And we would share some costs in that. In the last month, we've been told, we can't do it that way. We need to have 2 independent systems. So when you install 2 independent systems, now we have to buy 2 head ends.
I understand.
That was not anticipated.
Yep.
So I am anticipating the number to go higher because what we're now being directed to do.
Well, if at all
So-
possible, if you can come to that meeting with some guesstimate, and I understand it's a guesstimate,
Yep.
as to where we stand with that, that'll help, I think, help us have a better understanding, because we know we're going to find things in the fire station that we didn't anticipate. We know that. So I'm very reluctant to, speaking only for me, I'm very nervous about continuing on sort of somewhat blindfolded here on the police station, that because you're going to reach a point of no return. And we've got to build a station that works, so, you know.
Well, getting back to Cole's question, and I was
Well, it
kind
is
of-
to Cole's question,
And
actually.
and it's really where I circle around to,
Circuitous would say-
because I don't want to be criticized by saying, now I'm invoicing you for all this fire department work, that all of a sudden, you're saying, whoa, let's redesign this, or do something different on the fire station, when you've given me approval to say, let's go with this scheme.
Right,
think that's
we
Jim's
need,
point
we need to,
So, yeah, we-
to me, I think we need to have a better understanding of what we really have exposure on right now in the police
Yeah,
station
let's
before we go
balance.
any further.
Yeah.
Let's balance this before we take off on the fire station.
That's my opinion.
And you still have time
Yeah.
to do that. It's from the time we need.
Cool.
One last question. The site work is going to entail also the blasting, correct?
Yes.
And bring to bear to Matt's point about staging, is it at all possible at this juncture, since main drilling and blasting is there, be there until Tuesday of next week, is there a possibility under the conditions of contract to bring him on site to do the borings to determine what the extent of blasting is going to be needed, as opposed to restaging and bringing a firm out to do that later? Because the borings need to be done at some point, unless we can clear cut and finish the removal of any debris there to expose new ledge. We're running into that problem right now on our site. There has to be a definitive means to identify what we're dealing with. So that would be a question.
Bring geotech on board to do that.
Maybe I will make that trade.
For the PD site?
Rescind it.
Too late?
The,
Oh, good point.
at the fire department site, you're blasting rock.
Well, we will, yes, need to.
At the PD site, we're not blasting anything.
Not yet.
Well, we haven't, it's trench. So there's no
But on the site, we
blasting.
just talked about the site work, at least as far as the road goes, there's an issue. There's an
You
issue.
seeing an issue that with blasting requirements up there?
Solid ledge.
Where the water line's going in.
Water line's going, it's solid ledge. They spent a day digging about this much out with an excavator.
And Matt previously has already identified areas that are below grade that have to be addressed. I could recount them, if those are only needed.
Yeah, to the neighbor.
They gotta blast that whole site in. It's gonna be not cost effective to run a whole ram, I couldn't imagine.
I just throwing that out, I don't know contractually for.
But I don't know if we're in charge of, I don't know if we can hire the contractor that's under BC's direction of who he wants to bring in, I believe.
Well, Mike Crest already said that he wants to price it out with 3 companies. He doesn't want to just bring over main drilling and blasting.
So I think that answers the question.
Because we said the same thing to him, you know, wouldn't it expedite the job a little bit more if you just bring him over?
Yeah.
He's gonna, if he'll do it, you know, you're not waiting for a blaster to get freed up to come in. But he was pretty adamant about getting 3 prices on it.
Guess that answers the question.
With just talking about these trenches, what are you doing with the piping that's going from the HVAC compressors into the building? Because we don't see any provisions for bringing them in underground at all.
I don't have my drawings with me. I'd have to look on the drawings.
How deep will those be?
They don't have to be deep.
So that's something that we probably should get done as well before we close that slab.
Which is something the mechanical contractor will need to do.
Okay, even if it's not on the plan.
Oh, I've got to find out where it is on the plan, Bob.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's not on the plan. We have a condenser farm here and we have equipment here. They've got to know that there's refrigerant lines between the two.
And I didn't go back and look, but somebody told me that there's some compressors out in the back too, and those have to be brought in?
They're mounted on
We
the back
have
of
wall
the
mounted, we have
They're
2
wall
wall
mounted.
mounted on the back. They'll
Okay.
come in through the wall.
Yeah. I didn't know they were wall mounted. I just heard they were in the back.
Yeah, they are in the back, but they're on the wall. And those are for two small independent redundant systems,
Perfect.
not,
Won't need shade.
not fed off of the main compressor farm. So we have redundant backups going to computer rooms. And those are just the small compressors on the wall.
All right, so maybe we can take a look at that. Because if we're gonna blast, then we gotta, open that up.
Yeah, you gotta determine means and methods. The contractor's gonna help determine means and methods on how it's gonna be. Does he have the equipment to get it out of there, or is he gonna need to blast to get it out of there? We've got to,
Based on what they're blasting right next door to, within 10 feet of where this trench is going, it's all solid rock, so it's a pretty good assumption that it's all solid rock right there. So, and that's gotta go all the way across the street to where to pick up the fiber optics. So,
Eversource is out there putting a manhole in the ground. They're
yeah,
hitting the same thing.
yeah. That's probably about 30 feet away from the ledge. So, where we're looking at for the water line is 30 feet closer to the ledge, so this is a pretty good assumption, it's all ledge.
Now I see why they abandoned this site, right?
No, he abandoned it because of other reasons. We won't
It's
get
like-
into those.
He got to the underground and stopped.
Uh,
But the water line, is that something the town is putting in?
Yeah,
We're doing all the
And
site
the
work.
road off of the water tower road?
and there's
So-
two different places it's coming in. You've got domestic coming in one area, and then you've got fire suppression in the other area. So,
So that there's, it appears there's obviously going to be blasting required for that. And that can that be coordinated with what has to happen over at the fire station as well? Or is that the plan, or is that going to
I
be a
was just
separate?
going to
Yeah.
coordinate it to get this job moving.
Right.
Because that should be under the threshold, but that's going to be a change order as well.
Well, oh, yeah, if the general contractor got there.
Well, the immediate need is to get piping under where the slab is. Yes, the stuff that has to happen out in the road and getting all that, the rest of the water line in can happen after the slab's poured.
There's another
true,
question.
we could just put the stubs out and then
Yeah.
tie them all in afterwards. We just want to make sure we're putting them in the right places based on the electric room.
There was also a change order for protecting the feeder lines
For the critical ops.
on the critical ops,
To encase them in concrete.
because they couldn't, well, they didn't have the fire rating correct before.
Protection and fire rating.
We have, well, what you pointed out was they needed concrete encasement under the slab.
What type of method they use.
Right. And then we have a fire-rated shaft that goes vertically.
That's something I'd like to argue the point, because if it wasn't done properly and they use that means that they're doing it,
You have to have that argument with the plans and specs in front of you, and that's what we can do. If it's a requirement that they have in the spec and they chose the method that requires concrete, then it's not a change order. You can't base your argument on, I think they should have known. That's not an argument. You've got to say it's spelled out here or it's not spelled out here. And we'll win some of those, we'll lose some of those. But I haven't seen the paperwork. You just got it today. I haven't been at my office.
I'll be interested to hear what you have to say. With all of you.
Yep.
All right.
Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Anything else?
Anything else?
Any other good news?
definitely definitely need communication from
I
both
still say it's better.
parties,
2:30
because
this
we're not,
afternoon.
not really, it's in this, they're, both of the contracts, we're supposed to be getting weekly updates. But I definitely want to make sure we're getting communications, because all we're hearing is a one-sided thing from a contractor to date, and we don't have anything from you guys to say
He's
it's the
on site
opposite.
every day.
Well-
That's hard to,
Matt, I agree with you. And what we're planning to do is provide the town with the summary report on, I think we have a contract for a monthly summary report, but if you want something like an executive summary, like every 2 weeks, we could do that. We could provide that. You know. We are on site every day, so, it's our responsibility to keep everyone informed.
Can we, in line with that, I mean, I'm starting to feel somewhat guilty in piling on, but I'll feel guilty for a moment. I think that we know where there have been some breakdowns in this process that I think you folks have some ownership on. I guess I would like some assurance as to what corrective action you're going to take to make sure that this doesn't reoccur. And I'd like to see that in writing. I mean, you've seen a few of the issues associated with this, but I think there's a broader scope than that. I mean, and we've got to, I think, I'm looking to get some confidence reestablished here.
Of course, and rightly so, and that is our plan.
But I'd like to see that plan.
Correct. Correct. And this is my first meeting that I'm attending here, and we need to come back with a plan that will make you all feel more, to provide you more assurance of what you're looking for and change what was in the past, and bring you a plan that you feel confident that it will change, it will be different. Yes.
Can I add something to that? Are you gonna sit down with Mike and say, look, at every change order that you have, we have to know, when you start, what equipment you have? Are you gonna sit down and have that meeting with him and say, this is what's gotta happen?
No, Bob, I won't do that because he already knows that. So I just gonna provide him, moving forward, this is an assurance, unless we know before, special time and material, unless we know in advance, one more time, we will not even bother to review that change order. Because that's part of the arrangement, that's part of the agreement. He can't just come in and say, hey, here's proposed change order
Well,
for
he
time and
did.
material.
He did it with,
Well, we're still in the process of reviewing this. Some of them, perhaps, we've been there, but we haven't been provided with slips or anything like that. And it is totally unacceptable. It would not,
So will we have that by our next meeting?
we hope so, yes. It is part of the process. And like you said, we've been around, he's been around, he knows how it is, so it shouldn't be a surprise for him, nor the subcontractors either.
Yeah, but we have 10 invoices here that we can go through that process.
Right.
Well, not, are they
Well, more than 10, 13 of them.
Brian and I were going to review that proposed change order that is there, and we're going to go very careful on all.
Could you copy Matt and I at least on those emails, and Jack?
Well, this is going to be on the telephone conversation that we're going to review this. Okay.
Yeah, but there's gotta be an outcome to it, so.
Oh, yes.
Something in
Oh,
writing.
yes. Yeah.
That, just copy us on it so that we're aware of what's going on with it.
Okay. until 17.
motion to adjourn?
Second. All's in favor?
An enthusiastic guy.
Okay.
I'll vote.